My packer with me, Talk to Me contributor Esther Cracker, political journalist Ava Santina, and from America, Fox Nation host Tomi Lahren. Well, let me start with you, Tomi, because I'm going to say something that I know will horrify you. But I thought Joe Biden did quite a good job today, in continuing to come across to the region when a lot of his supposed hosts pulled out, which could have been seen as embarrassing for him, but also getting some humanitarian commitment from Israel and perhaps offering some calming perspective on what is a very incendiary situation. Your thoughts to me offering a modicum of praise to President Biden?
I appreciate it because I'm an American, so I would hope that our president looks strong to the rest of the world, so I'm glad that you had that takeaway. Unfortunately, I did not. When I saw him sitting on stage with Benjamin Netanyahu and fumbling through index cards probably written by a green-haired intern, I was honestly embarrassed. Furthermore, referring to Hamas as the other team was also quite embarrassing for me to watch. I'm happy that our president has had steadfast commitment to Israel and has pushed back at members of our own Congress who have been seemingly pro-Hamas. I am happy about that. Also, though, a little disturbed that he has committed $100 million of our taxpayer dollars to go to what he refers to as a humanitarian effort in Palestine and in Gaza, assuring us that it would go to civilians and not terrorists, though giving us no indication of how he would be able to separate the two, just as he told us that that $6 billion that he unfroze to Iran would not be used for terrorism. I'm not sure how he can assure us of that, but I'm happy to see that there are some folks on the other side of the pond that think our president looks strong. Here in America, that might not be the case for us watching all of this unfold.
I had a sneaking feeling you wouldn't necessarily agree with me. Let me come to you, Esther. You were just saying in the break an interesting thing. It's been an awful, since October the 7th. That we've all felt a real sense of heartache at what we're watching, fear about what may happen next.
Yeah, it's been awful. And, the thing is, because there is such a potential for this to become catastrophic and an all-out regional war and potentially a world war, actually the bar is pretty low. So yes, I do agree with you in the sense that Joe Biden didn't completely destroy things, but the bar is very low. I mean, this is still a doddering old man. He described Hamas, which effectively were responsible for firing the misfire into that hospital car park, as the other team. This is not a game of Monopoly. There are no clear winners and losers here. And for him to, it will take a stroke of diplomatic genius for him to be able to properly relay the complicated nature of this crisis. And he's just not up to the task. There's so many things he's not up to the task for. And unfortunately, this is the president that we have at the helm of this crisis. We just have to hope he doesn't make things worse.
Ava, this whole thing now comes down to me to what is a proportionate response by Israel to the atrocities we saw on October the 7th. There are many on the left who simply don't want to be seen to condemn publicly what happened on October, which I find staggering. I mean, just a human being just has to condemn what happened. But what is a proportional response? What is Israel supposed to do in the wake of such a horrific series of attacks?
Well, as someone with no military background, I don't think I'm the one to answer that question. And I do think...
But morally, what do you think they should?
Morally, I do think the left have condemned Hamas. And I do think, Hamas are terrorists. And I do think that is something the left are saying. The argument, which has changed dramatically this week, is now about humanitarian aid. Last week, it looked like we weren't going to assist in getting any aid into Gaza. And I think that was a huge concern for people. The narrative on that has changed now. I actually agree.
And it's changed because of President Biden's visit, I think.
Well, I was going to say I agree with Tomi Lahren there. And today actually made me quite proud to be British, because I thought that Sunak today at Prime Minister's Questions, I thought that was a real president. Prime Minister. Yeah. I thought that was statesmanlike. Yeah. I thought not taking a decision or not taking an opinion or a view on that hospital bombing until you were absolutely certain. I think that's exactly where the West should be.
But the thing is, I think, the talk about humanitarian aid, which is important, is no longer good enough. We need to stop failing the Palestinians, because that is what has driven them. I mean, Hamas haven't had elections since 2006.
Yeah, but I would say that sentence is problematic for me, because I think the plight of the Palestinians has been horrific for a long time, right? nobody with a brain, I think, thinks otherwise. This has to be sorted. It has to be resolved.
Yeah.
But you cannot use that as an excuse.
No, but
for pulling Holocaust grandmothers out of their beds.
Hamas are terrorists and they need to be destroyed. That's not an excuse.
In their cots.
But the reality is,
there's no
it's not
equivocation.
an excuse. But Israel will not prosper if Palestine doesn't. That is the reality. Palestinian leaders have failed their own people. Mahmoud Abbas is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Of course, there are questions of whether all this humanitarian aid is going to go to the right people. It obviously will not. But the reality is, because the focus has not been actually getting the Palestinians the kind of leadership where they deserve, where money isn't being funneled into rockets to be fired into Israel instead of proper leadership into a cohesive police force, for instance, Israel will never be safe. It will never prosper, and neither will the Palestinians. And unfortunately, this has just reminded us how important that is to
okay, I accept
out.
that. Let's completely change topic, because it's been a very serious show. And Tommy, I want to bring in you here because Richard Curtis, who wrote Love Actually and Notting Hill and all these great cheesy films, which I love, by the way, he's come out and said he was stupid and wrong for doing fat jokes, right, in some of these films. And it's because his daughter is clearly pretty woke, Scarlett. She said to me, "You could never use the word fat again. In my generation, calling someone chubby was funny. Like in Love Actually, there were jokes about that. They're not funny anymore." Now, I'm not exactly size 0. And I have had a lot of female panelists, co-hosts over the years do little chubby jokes. And you know what it makes me do? A, I laugh, and B, I go to the gym. It has a double beneficial effect on my well-being and health. Tommy, are we getting just ridiculously oversensitive? Should we not just be able to still laugh about people if they're chubby?
Yeah, there are far worse things to be called than fat or chubby, but I'm actually far more concerned about the glorification of obesity, certainly something that we do here in the United States a lot. We look at Lizzo as some kind of an icon because she is grossly overweight.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about hurting people's feelings, that's one thing. When you talk about encouraging unhealthy lifestyles and diabetes, that's quite the other. So, fat, chubby, it does make people feel nice, but when you glorify obesity, that's actually putting people in real danger.
So I wrote a column about this.
I think if we're going to choose between the two...
Yeah, I wrote a column about this last week, exactly on that point. Ava, it's interesting. There has been a weird kind of move to celebrate being morbidly obese. And by that, I mean Cosmo putting people on the cover who are like, 280 pounds and 5 foot tall, where they're clearly killing themselves through their enormous weight, and yet they are celebrated like this is body positive. It's not. Why are we doing this?
I mean, we did that for how many years? 20, 30 years before that? Heroin chic?
I agree, but that's the same. Just as damaging.
No, but that's what it is for most women who are on those covers. Most women aren't naturally a size 6 to 8, which is what you need to be on the, to be on the front page of a magazine. And actually, they are killing themselves in the same way that you argue that if people are larger, they're not healthy. Neither are the skinny girls.
I think they're both equally harmful. But on this Richard Curtis thing, I just read it. I love Richard Curtis. I think he's an absolute genius. And they're a lovely family. But I sort of groaned and went, if I listened to everything my kids told me, right, about what I should and shouldn't do on this programme, I mean, it would just be a total disaster, as I've told them.
It's cowardly. Because
not always, but sometimes.
We can't judge people now based on the standards of the past. We keep doing this with slavery, with reparations, all of that. We keep saying, oh, they were so terrible and I don't laugh at fat people, therefore I'm better. Guess what? It's not news to fat people that they're fat, right?
Yes.
The fact that they're not people, you may not make jokes about them in your comedy, doesn't negate the fact that when they look in the mirror, they see a large person.
Yeah.
And to pretend like it's a beautiful thing, that Lizzo is so beautiful because she's attractive. If I told you look like Lizzo, you would punch me because that is not a compliment in any way, shape, or form.
That is true. You would.
It's true, and you don't look like Lizzo. You're a healthy, beautiful woman. So let's stop pretending. He may not want to make jokes about it anymore.
I wouldn't pass any comments about any of you in an aesthetic way because I would have to then march myself to human resources.
Yeah.
But it's lovely to see you all. Thank you very much indeed. Tommy, great to see you over there. It was great to do your show the other day as well. Brilliant show. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much. And thanks for coming on again on Piers Morgan Uncensored.